When we think of the Roman Empire, we often recall its grandeur, its architectural marvels, and its military dominance. But beneath the surface of this powerful civilization lay a harsh and brutal system of justice. Much like other ancient empires, the Romans believed in severe punishment, not just to discipline offenders but to set a powerful example for the masses. Today, we'll uncover some of the most shocking methods the Romans used to maintain order, shedding light on the brutal realities of Roman justice. Breaking on the wheel. In this punishment, the condemned would be tied to a large wooden wheel and beaten with clubs or iron rods until their bones were shattered. The broken body would then be left on the wheel to die slowly, often in agony for hours or even days. This punishment was reserved for severe crimes such as treason or rebellion, and like many other Roman punishments, it was carried out in public as a grim warning to others. The brutality of breaking on the wheel lay in its slow, drawn-out nature. The victim's suffering was prolonged for maximum effect, ensuring that the crowd would remember the pain and the punishment. The sight of a person writhing in agony on the wheel was a clear message. No one was above the law, and the consequences of betrayal would be swift and merciless. Scourging flagellation, or scourging, was another common punishment in the Roman Empire, often used in conjunction with other forms of execution like crucifixion. The condemned would be stripped and tied to a post, where they would be whipped with a flagrum, a whip with several thongs often embedded with pieces of metal or bone. Each lash tore into the flesh, inflicting unbearable pain and leaving deep, bloody wounds. Scourging was used as a prelude to more severe punishments, or as a standalone punishment for crimes like theft, desertion, or blasphemy. What made Roman scourging particularly brutal was the intensity. Roman soldiers were trained to administer lashes with precision and cruelty, ensuring that the punishment was not only painful but left lasting scars as a permanent reminder of the offense. For many, scourging was a fate worse than death, as it often left the victim maimed or crippled for life, depending on the severity of the punishment. Crucifixion. Perhaps the most infamous form of Roman execution, crucifixion was reserved for the worst criminals, including slaves, rebels, and those guilty of heinous acts. The condemned would be nailed or tied to a wooden cross, left to suffer a slow, agonizing death from asphyxiation and exhaustion. Crucifixions were carried out in public spaces, intended as a terrifying spectacle. The sight of bodies hanging on crosses was a clear message: defy the empire, and your fate will be the same. A prime example is the mass crucifixion following the defeat of the Spartacus-led slave revolt in 71 BCE, where thousands of rebels were crucified along the Appian Way, their bodies stretching for miles. The agony of crucifixion was compounded by its public nature. Crowds would gather to witness the slow death of the condemned, a macabre form of entertainment that also reinforced the power of the Roman state. It wasn't just about punishing the guilty, it was about instilling fear in everyone who watched. The prolonged suffering, sometimes lasting for days, made crucifixion one of the most horrifying methods of execution the ancient world had ever seen. Poena Cullei, or punishment of the sack. This was one of the more bizarre and disturbing punishments used by the Romans, reserved for those convicted of parricide, the killing of a parent. The condemned was sewn into a leather sack, along with a live dog, a snake, a monkey, and a rooster. The sack was then thrown into a river or the sea, leaving the criminal to drown in the chaotic struggle inside the sack. This unusual punishment reflected the extreme abhorrence Romans felt towards parricide, a crime seen as an assault on the very fabric of Roman society. The symbolism of Poena Cullei was deeply rooted in Roman beliefs about family and societal order. By mixing the condemned with wild animals, the Romans made it clear that those who violated the sanctity of the family would be stripped of their humanity. Damnatio Ad Bestias, or condemnation to the beasts. One of the more gruesome forms of execution, this punishment involved sending criminals into arenas to be killed by wild animals, such as lions, bears, or leopards. Popularized in the infamous Colosseum games, Damnatio Ad Bestias was used for enemies of the state, traitors, or anyone seen as a significant threat to Roman order. The execution was part of public entertainment, where thousands of spectators would cheer as the condemned met their grisly end at the claws and teeth of ferocious beasts. The condemned would often be given no weapons or minimal defenses, ensuring a quick and violent death. The animals were deliberately starved to ensure their ferocity, and the crowd's excitement only heightened the atmosphere of terror. For the Romans, this wasn't just punishment. It was a reminder of their power over life and death, and a stark warning to anyone who would dare defy the state. Decimation, or military punishment. The Roman army was renowned for its discipline, and when soldiers failed to live up to the empire's expectations, the punishment could be severe. Decimation was a form of military discipline reserved for units that showed cowardice, mutiny, or desertion. Under this punishment, every 10th soldier in a group was chosen by lot and executed by their fellow soldiers. It didn't matter if the individual was personally guilty or not. The randomness of the punishment was part of its terror. The threat of decimation kept Roman soldiers in line, knowing that any failure could result in the death of their comrades or themselves. The practice of decimation was designed to ensure absolute loyalty and fear within the ranks. It was a stark reminder that failure was not an option, and that the consequences of insubordination could be deadly for everyone involved. Even in victory, Roman generals would not hesitate to enforce this brutal form of discipline, ensuring that fear maintained the efficiency of the empire's legendary legions. The methods of punishment used in the Roman Empire were as varied as they were brutal. Whether through the agony of crucifixion, the terror of facing wild beasts, or the humiliation of parricide punishments, the Romans ensured that their justice was unforgettable. That's all for today's video on the most shocking punishments used in the ancient Roman Empire. If you found this video interesting, make sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already.